thank you everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules today to join us. This is one out of a series of webinars, as well as toolkits and information that our team has diligently been working on in an attempt to bring topics that are of value to our IDC Win Workplace Solutions advisors, and as well that we happen to be passionate about, but we also want to have you engaged in the conversation and have the tools and resources to make you the best advisors you can be and be able to communicate effectively with your clients. So our topic of women in the workplace and menopause is our first topic, but just to give you a quick glimpse and the other things that our team is really diligently working on, and that will probably be showcased in 2025, are topics like obesity in the workplace, fertility, fibroids, endometriosis, because we know that that's a big issue for many plan members. We may be going down the road of youth mental health issues, because that's also something that's going on. And let's be clear, we may even be going down the road where we're intertwining the workplace, menopause in the workplace, and how that affects, but also men's issues that affect people in the workplace as well. And so our team is diligently engaged, educating ourselves and making sure that we're bringing this value to you. For those of you who have been on other webinars with me, you know that I always say IDC Win Workplace Solutions is not in the group insurance industry. We are in the business of humanizing benefits. And so with that, we want to ensure that we're bringing value to our advisors, that we're educating you to build up your credibility, that you're asking the right questions so that you are putting in a benefit plan that matters. Okay, so with that, I'm very pleased to introduce our panel today. And so I'm just going to go to the next slide. We have Carol Trotter. She is the CEO and founder of the Revolutionize Her Blueprint, kind of boots on the ground, private clinic, menopause clinic. We also have Christine Nanonin, who some of you may recognize. She has been part of our symposium this year, and she is the Director of Employee Services, LTD Management at Claim Ability Management. And Netta Nasiri, she's a Product Director of Pharmaceutical Benefits at Desjardins. So we also feel it's important that we have a carrier perspective in terms of product lineup ideas. We also have, for those of you who know Anne Beutler, she's been a huge part of our team over the last 5 or 6 years. She's our change management director of communications consultant, and we're always so happy to have her on board. And I'm going to pass the torch off to Rylee Hurley, because she has spent a lot of time building toolkits, building this piece, and she's going to be moderating this panel discussion for you today. And I think we're going to start off with some really important stats that is going to start us off. So Rylee, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you, Marni. So to Marni's earlier point, we really want to set the tone with the why. Why are we starting with menopause? Why now? And why should I be talking to my clients about this? And the first thing I want to kick us off with is 25% of Canada's labor market are women ages 40 plus. And if we dive down a little deeper there, 2 million of those women are 45 to 55. And this is actually our fastest growing working demographic in Canada. So we are merely at the tip of the iceberg. We're not even talking about women on benefits plans as spouses or as partners. We're literally just talking about women in the workplace, and women in this age demographic who will be inevitably experiencing perimenopause and menopausal symptoms represent a large portion of our workforce. And when we dig deeper, 10% of those women often quit their jobs during their best years because of their unmanaged menopausal symptoms. This could look like a change in jobs. This could look at passing on a promotion or reducing your hours, maybe even going off on disability or just retiring early because, one, they're dealing with symptoms that they might not even know is connected to menopause. Two, they don't have access to appropriate treatment to help them navigate those symptoms. And employers are losing usually senior executives or people at, the peak of their careers at this time. And there's a huge dollar impact on this. So 3.5 billion is the estimated annual income impact on the Canadian economy due to unmanaged menopausal symptoms. And this is kind of broken down into two tracks. $237 million is lost in annual productivity, while 3.3 billion is lost in income potential. So again, that number is really reflected of the impact of women leaving their careers at the height, leaving the workforce, and often leaving employers shorthanded. We have here 540,000 lost days work due to menopause symptom management. There's a huge benefit to having education and having understanding, and for employers to have systems in place to support these women so they can be healthy and productive at work and stay through the height of their careers and continue adding to their careers and adding to their employers. I wanted to add this one in because depending on the different industries that your clients might be in, the risk is higher than others. So if we look at healthcare and social assistance, this is a heavily female dominated industry. 81% of women in these industries, employees in these industries are women. And surprisingly enough, 50% of our Canadian nurses are above the age of 40. So we can start to see that as we dive into these female dominated industries, that impact and that risk is huge. That need for support is massive. And that trickles right down into education, business, finance, even agriculture, construction, manufacturing. No one's really, I don't want to say quote unquote safe from menopause. Everyone needs to be aware and working to support their employees, but obviously some industries are going to be impacted more than others. And, this data has come up time and time again. A lot of women surveyed believe that there is an employer support gap. 77% of surveyed women agree there should be more support in the workplace for perimenopause or menopause. 75% agree that their employers would benefit if there was more support at work. And unsurprisingly, the most commonly requested supports are things that are surprisingly at our fingertips and available. Folks just don't know where to look for them. So improvement to medical insurance to cover these treatments and therapies that maybe not be covered under a traditional plan, policies at work that support flexible working arrangements and time off, toolkits for employers, and awareness sessions and training. And all of this and this information is going to be found in our advisor toolkit that we'll be rolling out in a few short weeks as well. And a lot of this we're pulling from the Menopause Foundation of Canada. So some great resources and some great stats coming your way in addition to today's webinar. Finally, the good news about all of this is for every $1 that's invested in women's health, it yields a return of $3. So there's a huge upside for employers to be paying attention to this. And really today, that's our mandate, is we want to make sure that our advisors are well informed so they can go to their clients and make sure they're doing the right things for their employees. And that really kicks us off to the panel discussion. I'm so glad to be joined by these ladies today. What better way to start us off than actually getting an understanding of what the symptoms might be and what they might look like through menopause and perimenopause. So, Carol, I'm going to pass it over to you, and I'd love if you could just shed some light on what those symptoms look like.
Thanks, Rylee, and thanks, Marni, for having me. So, yeah, I just want you to picture this, that you walk into a business meeting, the room is comfortable, but then all of a sudden you have a winter coat that has just been put on you. You can't get it off, so you're now starting to overheat. You're in the middle of your presentation and you've just lost all the words that you were supposed to say. And on top of that, you only maybe got 3 hours of sleep last night. And honestly, that's been happening for the last 6 months to a year. This is really common to what a lot of women experience. And that we don't necessarily see that on the outside. They're struggling with that on the inside. I'm being very conservative when I say that there's over 40 different symptoms associated with menopause that we see on a day-to-day basis. As Marni said, I'm boots on the ground. I am helping women walk through these and hearing the symptoms that they have and how it's affecting them. The stat that Rylee shared, that 1 in 10 women leave the workforce, I'm one of those 1 in 10%. I am actually an accountant, and I left my job not knowing that it was my menopause symptoms that were creating this whole feeling of not thinking that I was losing my mind. And that's what I hear a lot from women all the time. They're losing their confidence. They're not sure what's going on. They're not sleeping at night. They're having these aches and these pains and things that are disrupting them on a day-to-day basis. And their anxiety is going through the roof and not knowing where to turn. So those are what I feel you experience more in the workplace is seeing those hot flashes and those forgetfulness that they're being passed over, they're losing their confidence. So that's really important to know and to understand that that's what's going on. Netta, do you have anything more else that you can jump in here and share?
In terms of the symptoms of perimenopause, I would say, um, I'm not there yet, and I'm very lucky as I'm listening to you. And I do have colleagues that are going through this, and it's funny because they keep on having um, this need to apologize for what they're going through. Because
Yes.
women um, we're always very strong on the apology for some reason. I mean, it dates back to Adam and Eve, right? I'm so sorry you had the apple, but it's kind of like, I'm so sorry today. I'm just like this today. I'm feeling that way. I'm sorry if this comes out as harsh. I'm sorry if this and that. And I find that this is, I mean, we're what, we're 50% women on in the workplace. We're 50% women in the world. Why are we apologizing for who we are and the things that we're going through? So I believe this to be a symptom maybe more of womanhood than of perimenopause, but for some reason it seems to be getting worse around that age because we keep on wanting to apologize for the things that we go through. Which I don't think is okay. And we need to get rid of that bad habit, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, Netta, just because they're feeling that pressure, the loss of confidence,
Right.
not even understanding or recognizing themselves anymore. And I see that all the time with women.
Mm-hmm.
You both bring up some really great points that, this can be complex, it can be dynamic, and again, all of these feelings and emotions and change in behavior and how we're functioning at work kind of come a little bit suddenly, and that's a lot to navigate on the employee side of things. This is your personal health, this is your body, you have to navigate your way through that. But I'm curious, we alluded to it a little bit in the stats, but what are some key things that you think employers need to understand about their employees who are going through menopause or perimenopause?
I think
Carol?
with that one, they need to be understanding that there's not a lot of answers out there for women right now. Things are starting to change a little bit as more of our demographic is moving into that. But as far as, reaching out to their medical provider, they may not be getting all the guidance that they need because they're not being given it either. So having the managers, the HR, all those different levels in the employer side, that they need to understand that when a 40 to 50 something plus woman walks in the door, what she's experiencing on a day-to-day basis could be totally different every single day. The
Mm-hmm.
ups and downs are real, and they need to be able to listen. They need to be able to kind of flow with what's going on, to give that latitude, to understand and be opening to hearing what these women are feeling about, because there's so much stigma, there's so much confusion, and women, as women, we don't feel like we can talk about it. Say we're starting to see a little bit of change in that, but we need to change it at all the different levels,
Can
just
I?
not in
Yeah.
our female circles. Go ahead, Marnie. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, so for the people on the call, or for the our attendees, as advisors, this might be where you want to kind of kind of be alert. I would think anyway, where you would now go ask the question. It's one thing to say, what's the demographic of your group? But if you get the responses, oh, well, I've got 20 employees and, 14 of them happen to be, in the age group of 45 and older, regardless if they say men or women. But that might prompt you now to go to, after this webinar anyway, to go, to ask further questions.
Yeah.
Are they women? Have you thought about, has anybody come to you with certain things that they've been asking for under the benefit plan? Have you thought about X, Y, and Z? Because this might be something that your employees may come to you with, or maybe they're too afraid to ask, but have you thought about that? Do you think that that's important? Should we be working with a carrier or a partner that has some of these things kind of built in, or is taking a forward thinking approach? So as advisors who are on this line, one of the reasons we're doing this today is so that you're kind of changing the conversation and you're making kind of a business case, building your credibility and getting in to do the discovery piece, and making sure that you're hitting some of these questions. Not unsimilar to if you were asking about, a younger demographic where their needs might be important, and you're going to want to make sure that you're doing a proper discovery. Rylee, I'm going to hand that back to you.
Awesome. Thank you. I think that's a great point. We need to be looking at the bigger picture. And I think, to Marnie's point, as advisors, we need to be listening to our employers and probing, because we can't make the assumption that, to Carol's point, that people are having these conversations, that the culture is there. We need to be the ones to kind of facilitate that and make sure the proper attention gets put on the topic. I do want to throw a little bit of a reference back to our earlier stats, because we talked about $3.5 billion being the economic impact in Canada from menopausal symptoms. And, that's a staggering number. That's really big when you see it in aggregate. But I'm curious, Christine, you work with employers on a regular basis. Can you speak to some of that more, individual company specific financial impact that is seen?
Sure. Thanks for inviting me to this discussion. It is very interesting. As Carol's boots on the ground with the individuals that go through this, Acclaim is boots on the ground with the employers that try to navigate what I think I've shared with you before, some people call the whisper network out there for menopause, that you can't really talk about it, and how do you talk about it and what do you say? And the financial impact of not talking, not populating this kind of discussion relates to things, as Rylee, you said earlier, retention is the primary one. So 25% of the population is over the age of 40, and the average onset of menopause is 51 years of age. And we're not talking about how we can manage this as in the workplace. What a loss. What a loss of knowledge, experience, abilities. Acclaim's a very function-based company, so we're looking at the functional ability somebody can do. So we're not seeing what you need to take away from somebody at work, but what you can do. So retention, the talent loss, absenteeism in the workplace. There's a study done by Deloitte Canada that shows that it's approximately 540,000 lost days of work can be attributed to menopause symptoms in Canada. There is presenteeism. Some of us on the call know what that means, but that's you're at work, but you're not at work. You're there, but what we call brain fog, which isn't a diagnosis. And I want to be clear that menopause itself is not an illness or a diagnosis in what the medical terms look at, but the symptoms that come from it are all the things we need the help with managing so that it can be better managed. So those are probably the primary financial impacts you'll see, is the retention, and then the sick leave, absence, work accommodation, mismanagement. I'd also say, Rylee, at Acclaim, what we see broadly is the mismanagement of medical concerns, and it's not any direct problem of a doctor not doing their job. But what happens with menopause symptoms is that so when someone's pregnant, that that's what you're dealing with, and what those symptoms will relate to. If someone has a diagnosis of something, because our medical industry is guided by MD guidelines to know how to manage those. But what happens with menopause and how it shows up in the loss of money is you end up utilizing doctors such as a sleep specialist, a psychologist, an endocrinologist for weight gain or hot flashes, right? Netta's nodding her head because we see it in the stuff that comes through from the rehab world. And each one of them independently says there's nothing we can help you with, but you spent the money and the time and the absence on that. And so where are you going with that? So if I'm an advisor, I'd be looking at those kind of stats for your employer about where their benefits are being used right now, if it's appropriate for that demographic group. As Marni was saying, that's part of your discovery, to know what your group is and whether and how you lead into that. And if I'm overutilizing independent things under conditions such as sleep specialist, psychologist, or an endocrinologist, even in those kind of avenues, then maybe that's time to look at, oh, does that relate to the age group? Oh, could this possibly be the demographic of women? Oh, maybe we should go to the toolkit for women's health.
Those are all great points. And I know we have a lot of great discussion about utilizing practitioners and how we can, make sure we're giving that flexibility and choice. So I want to table that point for a moment. And I do want to bring it back to your earlier point about losing key employees. That's really a big issue, right? You invest in an employee, they grow through their ranks, they're all of a sudden a senior executive with lots to give and vision and ready to give back to that organization, and then they're gone. Or they're not taking on work, or they're retiring early. And I'm curious, Christine, I'll put it out to you and then kind of open it up to the team to add on. But what, in your opinion, what can employers be doing to aid in retention? How can they be accommodating and investing in these employees to make sure that when they're at this critical time in their lives, they do have the knowledge and the resources they need to kind of, weather the storm, so to speak?
In short, probably what IDC is trying to do, humanize them. Is the one strategy, right, Martin? The ability to utilize more tools in the workplace to talk about it more. That might simply be, Carol and I have talked about these things, maybe you need a menopause advocate. Maybe your benefits need to include coaching services so that somebody can help navigate you to what you might need, because I don't know. I'm lucky I have people in my social group like Carol that can answer that when we're out on a long bike ride somewhere, and I can build up the questions to ask. But I don't know where I'd go in my own workplace, and I work at a really supportive female-based environment, but I don't know the questions to ask. So if I'm an advisor, I would hope that they've empowered me as a company owner to know, hey, you don't know the questions to ask. Here's how we can help. And they're populating that kind of message. So help the employer figure out what the questions are to ask. Get to know their employees a bit better in that way. That's the first thing I'd say. Carol, anything to add to that?
No, I love that for sure, Christine. That is the most important thing, is that communication, to being able to educate and knowing when you don't know and not being afraid to ask for help, right? So, because we don't know what we don't know. And it's like going out and buying a car. There isn't just one type of car we can buy, even though it might be our best friend's car of choice. But if they're telling us to go buy a 2-door coupe and we have 3 kids or 4 grandkids, that doesn't work for us. So when we look at different types of benefits, just because it works for this group, it might not work for somebody else. So giving that latitude to try different things, to not pigeonhole women into saying this is the only avenue you can go for something that isn't a diagnosis, as you pointed out, Christine, that has so many different facets to it, and every individual woman is unique.
I love that we're coming back to proactivity. And Netta, I know that this is a great one for you to jump in, and I would love for you to shed some light on why Desjardins has made the commitment to the women's health bundles and really what you guys are doing over there.
Yeah. The corporate answer to that would be that it's completely aligned with because Desjardins is a cooperative, right? So it's very aligned with the social responsibility of the company, and we do want to create a more inclusive and supportive environment for our clients, and of course the plan members as well. But I would say that there's also several different reasons why we did this. So for one, we heard the advisors, because this is something that we had surveyed them on. And it did come out along with some other pearls, of course, but it truly resonated with us, as our team is mostly made of women. And I mentioned it earlier, and we're women of all ages. We're all going through different ordeals. And honestly, like Christine said, sometimes we just don't know where to look for answers. So I'd say there's a definite gap in women health, and there's so many conditions that are just unique to women or that are worse in women, and I'm thinking about, let's say, breast cancer, anything that has to do with reproductive health, osteoporosis. So we wanted to address all age groups of women's health, not just focus on postmenopausal women or perimenopausal women. So I think it's important to target all of these, because at the end of the day, um, I find women tend to have a lot of burden. So we have the double workload, we have the mom guilt for some of us. There's so much media pressure to always be the perfect wife, the perfect cook, the perfect mom, and then mixed with conditions like postpartum depression, anxiety, migraines, or all these other mental health issues that are more frequent in women, and they can definitely impact the well-being at work. And we mentioned it before, it leads to presenteeism, it leads to absenteeism. And it's not like we can leave these conditions at home. They're not problems that are punctual, it's everyday life. So I think it was very, very important for Desjardins to have this commitment to women's health. And it's a way for us to promote health equity and to ensure that women have more chance of receiving the necessary care and support that they need to achieve better health outcomes at the end of the day.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
So there is a question sitting in the Q&A. We all know who it is, but we're on the same wavelength. Can you give us 2 or 3 concrete examples of what Desjardins has included in your offering, which, by the way, I think we just got an email yesterday. So for
Yeah.
any other advisors who are on this call,
Yes.
if you may be getting something if you do work with Desjardins, but could you give us 2 or 3 examples, concrete ones, of what you've included as something where an advisor would be like, oh, you're asking about that? Oh, this is what they're doing, or this is what they have. That would be
Yeah.
very helpful from an advisor perspective.
Yes, definitely. So one of the first thing I would say is there used to be an exclusion on genetic testing in many contracts in many different companies. So we took that out, unless someone really wants them to be still to still be not covered. But our standard would be to cover genetic testing when they are not for recreational use, meaning that, for example, if someone's mom and grandma had breast cancer and passed, this would allow the now remaining daughter to get tested for a BRCA genetic testing to make sure that they're not a bearer of the gene that causes that cancer. And then afterwards, they get to decide if they want to have a double mastectomy or if they want to do anything about it. But that test will now be covered under the diagnostic tests and lab tests and imagery. There's also the high intensity frequency. Yes, sorry. Maybe you know it better as the term BTL Emsella, which is a brand. Sorry to use a brand, but it's basically kind of a machine that you sit on to do pelvic readaptation or perineal re-education. So instead of this being invasive with like a physiotherapist, you get to just sit on a chair. It's like a 6-session thing. And these machines can be found at some physicians' places, but sometimes because the machine is a little bit more expensive, it tends to be at those more like cosmetic medicine clinics. However, the treatment has nothing to do with cosmetics. It is for pelvic weaknesses and for incontinence. And we know that a lot of women suffer from incontinence after childbirth. So this is an easy option, much less invasive and much less time consuming as well, and not that expensive, that allows women to get the help that they need. And thirdly, I could say that we also cover the HPV tests that are done at home. So there's home kits that are now available. They're still not available in every province in Canada, but where they are, these will also be covered by Desjardins insurance.
This is all super helpful. And you kind of answered my next question, but just in case there was anything else top of mind from a carrier product perspective, other than, helping cover some of those testing and different therapies, is there something else that insurance companies should be doing, or is there more from that product and coverage perspective that, should be on the radar?
I'd say awareness, campaigns, educating employers, all of that is very important still. We tend to associate directly cardiovascular disease with men for some reason, but 1 out of 5 women will actually experience a stroke in their life, and it's the leading cause of death in women, especially in that age group. It's usually because of the sudden drop of estrogen after menopause. And not everyone is informed of this. So right now we're working on an awareness campaign for basically stroke in collaboration with the Heart and Stroke Institute. And also you have to know that all these cardiac symptoms, they tend to present differently in women than in men. So for men, we hear, okay, so I have that chest pain, radiating pain in my arm. Okay, I'm having a cardiovascular event or a cardiac event. But for women, it actually manifests very differently. So women tend to feel either overly tired, they might be dizzy, nauseous, have some back pain, jaw pain. Honestly, as a mom of 2 toddlers, that's my current state of mind. So you can imagine that some cardiac events actually go unnoticed in women, which is even more dangerous because then you don't get the treatments you need as secondary prevention. So if the insurer can help disseminate these health promotion messages along with the patient organizations, well, I mean, all the better for employers and employees' sake at the end of the day.
That's awesome. I really like that it's coming back to education and awareness and transparency. Those are tools that we can just help empower folks. But at the same time, advisors, you might still be, you might still have questions about, why should I be bringing this forward? Why can't I just be waiting for my clients to say, hey, we need these support or we need these resources? Christine, I'm curious if you have any commentary on, just to reaffirm why advisors should be bringing this up.
Sure. Thanks, Ryder. Yeah, the bottom line is it's good strategy. It's about return on investment for your client. It's about them appreciating what you do. You're supposed to be the knowledge expert when it comes to advising. It's in the word advisor. So I'm sure it's in the dictionary definition of it too, if I went far enough. But if employers are equipped with the right solutions by their advisors for their demographic group, then it leads to their employer having retention, productivity, and engagement. So if the 2 simple words you say as an advisor to your employers, you want me to help you with retention, you want me to help you be able to build your business, let me help you tailor your benefits to the right way. If we already know, Rylee, you said that more than 2 million women are working in Canada between the ages of 45 and 55 in a 10-year period of time, eh? And it's likely that your own clients, the advisors that are on this call, are affected. There's an article out there by C.D. Howe Institute on Juggling Act, Women Work in Closing the Gap is what it's called. And it just came out in 2023, I think. And it shows that, and Rylee, you brought up the groups, but women are overrepresented in healthcare and social services, in the education, the hospitality, and the food services industry. And I don't know about you, but I was just in Toronto last week, in the hospitality and food services industry, I couldn't find anything else to do but go eat or visit something. So it's got to be a big industry. But if those are your groups as an advisor, and those are the largest markets, even in Greater Toronto area, the GTA area, though, that the hospitality and food services is the biggest industry out there. And if you know that your client has, if you're working in the healthcare industry, in the social services industry, you know that your clientele is probably 65% women. And if you don't know that, you should know that. And it's probably women between 40 to 65. So I would be saying, as an advisor, I would just be asking the simple questions. Do you know what's the age group? And if you don't know, how can we know? Let me tell you from the products that are being used where we assume that the age groups are. And let's see if we can tailor that better for you with some of the ideas in a women's health toolkit, like Netta was talking about. You should be discussing women's health. it'll make everyone happy. I'm sure even men and those in mix in general, children, all of it. So those are my broad looks at why an advisor should be doing that.
Christine, can I just ask a question? Being on that disability side of it, short term and into long term, like I think we've spoke about this offline before, but where do you think, like, do you think that there's going to be a lot of disability claims, or maybe sickness claims turning into disability claims in the next number of years as this becomes maybe more acceptable to speak about, maybe more accepted in organizations, maybe more that HR is more in tune with their employee demographic and really caring about their employee demographic where they're catching these things. But number one, are there stats? And number two, do you see a world where there's going to be more short-term disability and long-term disability claims as a result of this?
Yeah, I think there'll be more women showing up in it as a workforce and I think it'll be fragmented, like I was talking about before, Marnie. Like it's showing up already, and it's going to show up more still until the medical industry can get aligned on how they're coaching people through it. And they really should be leading people back to resources within their own employer group. Acclaimed as a mental health ecosystem, and inside of that, we talk about women's health. And we're there to help you navigate through that. But we don't even know. If you don't know what your symptoms are, if the medical industry can't tabulate them into something, we need to help you with the symptoms. So yeah, it's going to grow because it's growing. We're already seeing 50% in most of my book of business groups are smaller groups, 500 heads and under. And they're usually groups that are dominated by a group of people, social services, the healthcare, finance, and insurance are the type of groups that I see. And yeah, they're absolutely dominated by women. And I'll be honest with you, nobody's really asking. And until you guys came out and asked if we could speak at this menopause, it had been whisper conversations in the background. And that Desjardins doing toolkits, that's a positive thing. So I think if you want to be an advisor that changes things, you get ahead of that. Because we're not going anywhere. It's only getting to be a larger population in the world, right? And we can't all step out of work. We won't even own our own companies then, if we just step back or we don't talk about it at the table. So I think it's time.
If I can add something, Christine, you said talking about it. One of the things I think is important, and that's maybe valid for mental health as well, but is for women leadership to speak up. Because when it comes from your executives, it kind of breaks down the stigma. So then people will be more open to talking about their symptoms. And you also touched base on disability. When I looked into our disability data, it's kind of impossible to pinpoint who left, right? Because menopause isn't a diagnosis. So why did they leave? Was it sleep issues? Was it depression? Was the depression caused by menopause? Or it's very hard to capture.
And that's right. And thanks for sharing that, because we're on the same page with what we don't see. The Menopause Foundation has been developed for a reason. It's to lead policy into this, to talk about this. There are legal cases in Britain I haven't found them in Canada yet, about really the legal issue is that if people leave their work, it can be ageism discrimination because maybe I had a boss, not necessarily a male boss, guys, but I had a boss an employer that didn't see that what I'm showing up for at work is related to that. And they weren't sure if they should bring it up because we're not supposed to talk about medical.
Yeah.
But if you knew you had resources that you could slide across the table to somebody, a variety of resources, and one of them on it was menopause. And I decided that's the one I wanted to look at because I'm a woman in that age group. There I go. Off to get the right resources, off to make a difference. So maybe, Marnie, from what Netta and I are saying about what's out there, maybe if we can make an effect, if we as leaders can do this, maybe there'll be less.
Got it.
I think the mention of symptoms here is really powerful. We've talked a lot about how menopause isn't a diagnosis, but there are a lot of symptoms of menopause that are debilitating, and they are the leading forefront issue that a lot of women are navigating. So knowing that, and this is kind of going to be a rolling few-part question as we get more in the weeds in the benefit side of things. But, I'm curious, we've talked a lot about treatments, we've talked a lot about mental health, other types of practitioners and supports and therapies. What should be included in a benefit plan that is inclusive of menopause?
I guess I'll go with that one. So we had the question a few minutes ago. So that BTL and SELA, or high intensity focused perineal electromagnetic treatment. So I said it now. That is very, very useful, not only after childbirth for incontinence, but also for women going through menopause. I mean, very often up until the age of menopause, women have not had any time for themselves. So maybe that's when they'll be starting to target, well, the incontinence that they've been living with for the past 15 years, or they're going to think about the vaginal atrophy that they're going through, because that's one of the symptoms of menopause as well. So that's definitely something important. I think some other things that should be included for menopause are anything that has to do with drugs, of course, like drugs for hot flashes. There's new drugs available on the market. There's drugs for osteoporosis, drugs for the treatment of obesity, drugs for the treatment of sexual dysfunction, shingles vaccine, even. It's not directly related to menopause, but still, at that age, we're much more prone to having a shingles attack. So there's tons of things that can be done to address different conditions. There's even insomnia that's so associated with hormonal imbalances. So there's tons of things that you can include that are probably already in a lot of different categories. That's why I talk about a bundle of things that you can do for women's health. And always remember that women's health goes beyond menopause, because there's a lot of different people working in your companies, and it goes from 18 years old to sometimes 70 or 80 years old if
That's
we're
right.
lucky.
Yeah. Rylee, can I broaden that just a bit too, just to add a little bit more to that?
Absolutely, you can.
And
Yeah.
I don't know much about as much about the advisor world as you think I do, but I would think if we can broaden that a bit too, if inside healthcare spending accounts or extra gives are things like, Carol's a menopause coach. Had I known there was such a thing, that somebody could walk me into even more natural approaches. I respect when I need medication, and as I often say in our business, all of us have a diagnosis and all of us probably have a treatment plan for it. So we're all people that give to that. But Carol, can you add to that too, as far as some other things that Netta was saying? Like, I would think this softer care approach too to that, having a navigator or a coach, and what a coach would do even in that way. What are some other things that you should consider as an advisor?
Yeah, no, I love that. Thanks, Christine. So yeah, there is those parts that we need that added medical care, but we can often look at this from a health and like a natural lifestyle, like nutrition and lifestyle. So things are often looked at in silos, like, okay, we got to go see the endocrinologist, we got to go see the cardiovascular surgeon, we need to go see our GP for this. But what are they all based on? And it comes down to nutrition and lifestyle is your foundation. So, and that's where I come in with my clients, is I help them build their foundation, fix the cracks in their foundation. It's like we wouldn't just put buckets under a leaky roof. We would fix the roof, right? So that's why we got to fix that foundation. Sometimes these women need those additional service for pelvic floor. They need additional help for insomnia. They need these different resources. But giving them that opportunity that if they choose that they don't want to go the medical route, some people can't go the medical route when it comes to menopause conditions. Like when I'm talking medical route, I'm talking about hormone replacement therapy because of stuff that is in their lifestyle, whether they're had breast cancer, they have it in their family. They can't use that for whatever reasons, or lots of people don't want to. They have that choice to make that. So giving women that option, and how I'm hearing, because I'm not in the healthcare world whatsoever, but giving them that ability maybe within their healthcare spending to spend it how they want to, as opposed to more narrow focused.
And
Mhm.
Carol, just a follow-up question on that, because you are our boots on the ground and you are working with folks in this capacity, do you often see that if clients come to you, they're like, oh, this is great, this is covered by my benefits, or is this often a gap that you see where this form of support and this form of therapy and coaching isn't something that they usually have the coverage for?
Great question, Rylee. In 6 years of doing that, I've never had one woman covered.
Yeah.
I have
There
had
we go.
many come to me saying, do my benefits cover this? And of course, I've said, you got to check with your benefit provider. And it always comes back, no. The most that some have, and not all, that I could maybe squeak in, is under nutrition. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist, but it's so small of an amount of money, that bucket that's there, that they can't take decades of what's been happening in their body. So what Netta is talking about, like it's happening, postpartum and what have you, what is happening in menopause is starting in our 20s and 30s. So it's not like it can be fixed and repaired in like an hour, 3 hours. It takes time, right?
A
So
nail hit
yeah,
done, as we say.
yeah. And 6 years, no, I've never seen it once covered.
But I want to answer. I want to answer that. So we had looked into covering that type of coaching. The issue with that is because of the Canadian tax law. So that's why the health spending accounts need to cover only things that are considered by the government as medical charges. Since coaching is not a medical profession per se, that's why it can be covered. But it can be covered in a not in a
Wellness account.
yeah, well,
There we
like
go.
a cost plus type of thing. So that's possible, or a personal wellness account.
That's
At
great
least
to
with
hear.
that,
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good
So any
discovery.
advisors that are out there that aren't don't know how to set up a healthcare spending account or set up a wellness account, well, that's when you're going to come and help come and reach out to our team to help navigate that for you, because I suspect that this is going to be an ongoing issue, and I suspect that as advisors put in more benefit plans, feedback coming from if you start building a nice block of business on the group side, you're going to start to hear feedback from your business owners, from the employees. Do you know if this is covered? Why isn't this covered? And so to be able to go back and be educated and be credible with your answers, and say, it isn't covered because of CRA rules. However, we could solve some of this by putting in this type of program. Well, you've now probably saved the client. You've made an amazing experience, let's say, for the employees. You're covering yourself. Your credibility has increased. You're making this a humanizing experience, and you're taking care of all your stakeholders. So I would think that would be something really important to another thing to take out of this webinar today.
Yeah, Marni, I'll add one more to that I just heard about this week from another scope, but it would work in this industry too. If your employer just wants to say, put a short-term cost into offering experience, somebody to help navigate or understand it. Many people hire an on-site counselor for a month or 2 or 3 months when they know things are stressful in their environment, and they put that cost into a small thing instead of a year of something. Maybe that's all you need to do to help educate the workforce and show the retention and succession planning that you're doing, because you recognize your group. This month, we're going to offer you some women's health strategies, and we're going to pay for it on this month for somebody to be available for a couple hours. We're going to pay for it in another way for it to be available here. Years ago, I sat at a union arbitration, and there were people at the table that were in more first responder type environment. And there was a lady at the table who's very pregnant. And she was at the table at the negotiations because she was arguing about benefits because there were none for pregnant women because they were first responders. And they had not looked at that. Now we're here with menopause. If we have to show up and we have to be profiled to get it, then that's what we have to do.
And on before we go on, and I'm noticing the time. Another question, same person, but it doesn't matter. Very important question. So this is not just a women's issue, but this affects all members of a household. So there are people on this call that are married to a woman, have children that are female in many different age groups. So the question would be, what should we be doing as advisors, right? Like, so from what do you think that we should be doing to help communicate effectively to all stakeholders, and also to men who are probably challenged with some of to help their spouses, to help their children, to help their maybe high demographic workforce who are women and they are the manager, and what kind of things should they be looking into within their benefit plan to help them as well. Anybody can take it.
Oh, I was going to say.
Anybody, I don't know, Netta, maybe it's you, or maybe it's just something that we just have to, I mean, maybe it doesn't need a comment, but maybe from anybody who's on this line that's in an HR perspective, coaching mechanisms,
Right.
webinars on coaching,
So
bringing these things and communicating.
There is one thing, and I really don't want to preach for my company. That's really not my goal today. And probably other insurers have that in place as well. You have to look into the coaching that the insurer offers, because very often there's different medical pages that we offer with information, different resources, and there are coaches that are attached to that. So I know for us, you can get 5 hours with a coach for every condition that's actually named on the page. And of course, in women's health, we've got fertility issues, menopause, whatever. So that's just a small thing, but it's better than nothing. So there's that. But as to your question, I think we need to provide the tools for the advisors to have those conversations, because I mean, as a female advisor, it's maybe perhaps a little easier to get on with this discussion, but as a man that's actually having it, I think they're going to need a little bit more support to be able to have that and to be taken seriously.
And to build on that, because this came up as we worked on the toolkit that we'll be rolling out. So a little bit of a sneak preview, but honesty and transparency is really the way to go. Leading with, as a man in, whatever capacity, as an advisor, working with an employer, as a partner, supporting someone through menopause, whatever that capacity looks like, knowing that this isn't something that you're going through, but being honest about where you think you can help, listening, being a leader, and honestly, just frankly talking about it, transparency, setting the tone so people feel comfortable coming to you. That's really where we see a lot of success on the employer side of things. And I would imagine as an advisor, if you're leading the charge, you'd be surprised with how many people come back with conversation or questions to really on any health related topic.
Marni knows I went out to some brokers I know generally, and they were men. And I just said, what do you know about menopause? And, they'd quote other some insurance groups, their papers or their work on it. And then they'd say, and what my wife tells me is the follow-up on that. But really, it's a great question. Like, advisor, if that's all you have to ask is, what do you know about menopause? And do you need to know about menopause in your workplace? And why are you asking me that question, is what I'd say as an HR. Well, because I took a look at your stats and this is what I wonder if this is something that shows up and you just don't know it's showing up. So that's humanizing it. That's it.
Do we have any other questions? Because in the essence of time, I think we've got 5 minutes left. So was there another question that you wanted to ask, Rylee?
The only thing that was really on my agenda to wrap us up is how advisors can be helping their clients navigate that. But I think with the round of questioning, it feels like we've covered that. And of course, advisors, if you do want more support, reach out. We're here to kind of take that conversation offline with you as well.
So with that, I want to give a special thank you to Carol and Christine and Netta for taking the time to be with us today. Also, a big thank you to 3 people that are backstage during this webinar, 2 of which were pretty eager to be listening today. And Anne is also backstage, who's always been so vital in our success and communication, because this is all about proper questions, communication, getting out there, separating yourself out as an advisor. Our job, as I said at the beginning, and I'm going to end with it now, is that we are doing research. We are in tune. We hope that we are bringing value to everybody in terms of the ideas that we want to promote. We want to make sure that we're doing things that are of value to our advisors, that are going to separate yourself out as an advisor to build your credibility. And then ultimately, the goal is that you're putting in a benefit plan that actually matters. So if you've been with me before, you know I always say it's one thing to put in a benefit plan, it's another to put in the right benefit plan. And so when we talk about topics like menopause or obesity in the workplace, that I think is our next one that we're doing, or maybe it's some sort of mental health initiative, or other topics like fertility, endometriosis, fibroids, that you're understanding that we're doing it from a place of value and a place of in a place of being human. And that we care about these topics, and we want to make sure that we're building upon that. So with that, I'm going to thank everybody for being with us today. And we look forward to our next webinars that are coming up. So
thank you. And a special thanks to you, Marni, for actually giving us the occasion to talk about this very important topic.
Well, you're welcome. and Rylee, who has been very diligent and really going the extra mile and putting this all together. So with that, we're going to end the meeting and let everybody get back to your days. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.